The Trade Union Federation Cosatu wants the government to come up with a stimulus plan to prepare for the impact of the coronavirus, potentially stretching the country's already strained finances. To discuss this further, we're now joined on the line by Matthew Parks, who's Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator. Thanks so much for joining us on the line. We're going to be hearing from the President in about 20 minutes' time. As a Labour grouping, what would you like to hear at this critical time from the President?
Hi, thank you for having me. Look, I think we'd want to hear three main areas of intervention by government and the private sector with regards to the coronavirus. The first one is around the issue of health. We need a clear health plan to help those who are infected, clear quarantine plans, but also clear treatment plans to help, especially those who are already, as you said, are old, their immune systems are already quite low, etc. Because we can be sure that, yes, Europe right now is the current epicenter, but soon afterwards it'll be Africa, and we're much less prepared than Europe or China would be to handle such an epidemic. I think the second one would be about a public health awareness program, how to make sure people are aware of the symptoms, what are the measures they need to tackle to address it, look at free health testing for people. It can't be the situation which we have right now, where medical aids want to charge people 1,500 rand to get tested. We should really be treating this as a war footing. But the last one is about the impact on the economy. China and the European Union are our largest trading partners. If we're not able to get our mining and manufacturing and agricultural exports to them, it's going to hit our economy very hard. Equally, we depend upon Europe and China and Asia for a huge chunk of our tourism industry. If Chinese and European tourists are not coming to our economy, that will hit our hospitality, retail, hotels, restaurants, shopping centers, etc. And of course, South Africans also themselves will be less likely to go out to the shopping centers, etc. So we really need to have a plan from government to help stimulate the economy, release some funding from the PIC, the Development Bank, the IDC, the CETA, etc. But as you said, the government finances are extremely overstretched right now. So we really need to see the banks also come into the party as they're doing in Italy, where the Italian banks have announced a 1-month home loan payment suspension to help kind of stimulate the economy, to help to protect those who are not earning money, etc. So we're meeting with government tomorrow at NEDLAC. We had requested a corona plan from government already 2 weeks ago. So we'll be hearing to them tomorrow, but what's the plan, economically and health and education. But also we need to have the private sector also contributing in a massive way. And we think we'd want to see the Reserve Bank also cutting interest rates by at least 100 basis points as part of kind of protecting the economy and protecting small business and industry who are already very fragile.
So government finances are not great, and as you said, the economy pretty abysmal at this stage. And given the impact already we're seeing with the coronavirus, it's unlikely to improve in the short term. So you have pointed to the private sector. What kind of things could the private sector do to help Labour in this difficult time?
I think two main points. One is that both the Reserve Bank and the private banks can reduce the interest rates. That's within their immediate control. They can reduce it easily. And the banking industry has huge profits and assets worth over 7 trillion rand. So they've got enough space. That's the one thing, to make the loans, the debt levels more affordable to industry and to consumers that are already paying. But I think the more bold and decisive one, which can have a much far greater impact, is to do what the Italians are doing, which is to say for this month or the next 2 or 3 months, industries, workers who cannot afford to pay normal payments because they're not earning because of the economic crisis, etc., that they could be given a 1 or 2 or 3 month holiday from the home loan, the car loan, and other payments. So it wouldn't be a write-off, but basically you delay the payments for 1 or 2 or 3 months. The banks have got sufficient reserves to manage that. And of course, if you're a small business owner or farmer or factory worker or mine worker and you're not getting paid, where will you have money to pay for your house? So these are the kind of creative ideas. We're in very unusual circumstances, and it really requires us to come very bold and creative, immediate interventions. The small piecemeal stuff won't work. We need to be bold. And look, that's what other countries are doing. That's what China, Italy, the US, Russia are looking at. Korea is coming with a similar plan, so we need to be bold likewise and come with very bold and decisive plans.
All right, so are you accepting, though, that some companies that were literally borderline probably can't push any further, and that might mean other companies close, or there may be some job losses post this coronavirus period?
But that's a serious risk. And again, that's where we need to see government assisting. The Unemployment Insurance Fund has got assets worth about 176 billion rand. They do have dedicated programs right now in existence which helps companies which are on the verge of collapse to access for funds from the UIF. The UIF then pays for funding for those salaries for those workers for a 6-month period. They provide reskilling opportunities, etc. I think they can be expanded a bit and so on. And we want to see that happening really fast. The one difficulty has been in the past that the bureaucracy in the UIF takes too long to help companies in distress. So we think there's a need for them to cut through the bureaucracy and the red tape in a decisive way. Because companies which are going under don't have 3 months or 6 months to fill in paperwork and bureaucracy. They need help urgently. And it's going to hit a lot of companies. We've already seen across the world international airlines basically asking for governments for bailouts. We don't have that kind of money, but we need to look at creative ways to tap into the money we do have and to use it in a very sharp, impactful manner.
Have you started to have some conversations? I mean, questions have been raised about when a worker finds themselves in a situation of self-quarantine, who should bear the cost for that time away from work? Is this something that you've been engaging employers on?
Not yet. That's part of our engagement tomorrow with business and the leadership of government. Ideally, the employers, especially the ones which are more wealthy, the larger companies, the big retailers, the big hotels, etc., should continue to pay their workers. Those workers have served them loyally for so long. The corona thing is only it's probably, or hopefully, to be like a 2-3 month crisis. But employers who generally can't afford it, they should apply to the UF for assistance, and the UF should make its assistance much faster and more expansive to assist them in this moment of need. So we need to find a balanced approach where both employers and government all contribute to the party. And it has been done in the past, and it can be done if we're creative.
All right, so I suppose for you the bottom line is that everybody has to work together. Government has to be creative in stimulating the economy and thinking out of the box and perhaps learning from other countries on how to manage through this difficult time.
Exactly. I mean, the economy is already in a very fragile state. We're in a recession, less than 1% growth. We have 40% unemployment. So this could be a fatal knock, and we really need to pull at all stops to manage the tide.
All right, Mr. Parks, we're going to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us.